Hey, what's up coders? Hope you are doing well. Today we're creating an accordion, which is a component that organizes content within collapsible items. Accordions allow the user to toggle between hiding and showing blocks of content with a single click, thus greatly enhancing the user experience. In our example, we are using the accordion for the frequently asked questions part of our page. So the visible part of the accordion is the question, and the hidden or collapsible part is the answer. As usual, we are creating this component from scratch with HTML, CSS, and Vanilla JavaScript as an alternative to using some framework. I hope you guys will enjoy this video. Don't forget to share, like, subscribe. If you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the comments section below, and I will respond accordingly. Okay, let's go. So this is our starting point. In the project folder, I've created three files: the index.html, style.css, and the main.js files. In the index.html file, I typed some basic HTML5 code, and by the way, the code editor I'm using is the Visual Studio Code editor. I inserted the title and linked the external files to the document, the style.css and the main.js files. Both of them are currently empty. Notice that instead of placing the script in the body right above the closing body tag, I placed it in the head using the defer attribute. And we can now proceed to defining the markup for the body. Let's start by adding an H1 heading, FAQ, frequently asked questions, and next let's create the accordion. For this purpose, let's use a div with the class accordion. This will be the accordion element, which will contain the collapsible items. Each collapsible item will be a div with the class accordion item, which in turn will consist of two parts. The visible part, this will be a div with the class accordion item header. In our specific example, it will contain the question, and the hidden or collapsible part, this will be a div with the class accordion item body. And in our specific example, it will contain the answer. So this is the main structure, and of course we can add any number of accordion items. Alternatively, it would also totally make sense to use an unordered list as the accordion element and list item for accordion items. Or we could even create a quote-unquote native HTML accordion using the details tag combined with the summary tag. So within the summary, we would include the visible part, in our example, the question, and outside of the summary, but still within the details, we would include the hidden or collapsible part, in our case, the answer. As usual, there are many ways to approach the problem. Each approach has its advantages and disadvantages. Now, back to our implementation, let's add content to the accordion item header. This will be a question. Let's say, what is web development? And we are done with the header. Regarding the plus and minus symbols, we will add them using the CSS before or after pseudo element over the accordion item header. And finally, let's also add content to the accordion item body, but instead of directly inserting the content here, let's include it within a div, or could be a paragraph, doesn't really matter, with the class accordion item body content. This will be the last level, I promise, and the reason we are doing this is because in order to animate hiding and showing of the accordion item body, we will use the max height property over it, which will not work as intended if we add padding. So in order to have flexibility in adding padding, we are using this additional container element for the content. Okay, let's add the content, which will be the answer to this question. I will just paste it. And for now, let's add one more accordion item. Question will be what is HTML? And the answer once again I will paste. Very nice, let's save, and before proceeding to styling with CSS, let's open the project in the browser. For this purpose I'm using the live server, which is a Visual Studio Code extension. So this is what we've created up to this point, and let's move on to CSS. For starters, I will paste some general styling not directly related to the main objective of this video. So we are importing the Montserrat font family from Google Fonts, setting margin and padding to 0 and box sizing to border box for all elements. For the body, we specify the font family, background color and color. And for the H1 heading, we set text align to center, margin to 2 rem for top and bottom and 0 for left and right, and the font size to 2.5 rem. I think the default font size for an H1 heading is 2 rem. Actually, it is 2 em. In general, I prefer using rem so that sizing is only relative to the root font size, which usually is 16 pixels. Makes things less complicated, but again, each approach has its pros and cons. And now let's style the accordion. Starting with the accordion element, which contains everything else, let's set its width to 90% of its container element's width, in this case the body. But we don't want it to get wider than 1000 pixels, so let's set max width to 1000 pixels. And let's also set margin to 2 rem for top and bottom and auto for left and right in order to horizontally center it. Next, let's style the accordion items. And let's start by setting their background color to white, color to very dark gray, almost black. Let's also add some margin, 1 rem top and bottom and 0 left and right. And let's also round the corners a bit by setting border radius to 0.5 rem. We could also add box shadow with 0 pixels horizontal offset, 2 pixels vertical offset, 5 pixels blur, and 0 spread. Color will be RGBA 000 and opacity 0.25. Nice, it is quite subtle since background color is dark. If for example it was white, then it would be more obvious. We could make the box shadow a bit more intense, for example by setting opacity to 0.5. Let's also increase vertical offset to 4 pixels and blur to 8. Here we are, just a matter of preference. Personally, I prefer box shadow to be a bit more discreet. Next, let's style the header of each accordion item. And let me paste this part in order to save some time and quickly go through. So we are setting padding to 0.5 rem for top and bottom, to 3 rem to the right so that we give some space to the pseudo element containing the symbol, and 1 rem to the left. We also set minimum height to 3.5 rem, line height to 1.25 rem. So if for example question extended into 2 lines, then the total height of the header would be 2.5 plus 1, which equals the minimum height. In other words, this way we ensure that if question takes up to 2 lines, then the height of the header will be the same. Otherwise, of course, it will expand to fit the content. We also set font weight to bold, display to flex and align items to center in order to vertically center its content, position to relative, since we will absolutely position the pseudo element relative to the header, and cursor to pointer. Now let's add the symbol with the help of the after pseudo element. Notice the use of double colon notation in order to distinguish between pseudo elements and pseudo classes. This was introduced in CSS 3, so for backward compatibility, browsers also accept single colon notation. Okay, and now let's set content to the plus symbol. Here we are, and let's increase font size to 2 rem. Nice, but instead of directly inserting the symbol here, in order to ensure consistent representation, let's use the CSS entity code. There are of course many places you can find the CSS code for the entity you are looking for. One such a place is the W3 Schools website, CSS entities, and here's the URL, and a table containing the character, CSS entity and name. So for example, let's search for the plus sign. Here we are, and this is the CSS entity code 002B. And now let's position the element. So let's set position to absolute. Here it is, but we want to place it to the right. So let's set right to 1 rem. Nice, I'm okay with that. Now when the accordion item is open, the active class will be added to the accordion item header, thus changing the currently displayed symbol from plus to minus. So let's do this. So whenever the active class is added to the accordion item header, the content of the pseudo element will change from plus sign to minus sign. And of course, whenever the active class is removed, content will change back to plus sign. Okay, let's check whether this works by adding the active class to the accordion item header of the first accordion item, and indeed we get the minus sign. By removing the active class we get the plus sign, and so on. But sooner or later we will have to use JavaScript in order to toggle between adding or removing the active class to the accordion item header upon a click event over it. So why not? Let's do it now. For starters, let's select the accordion item headers and store them into a variable. Next, we want to loop through each accordion item header of the node list containing all accordion item headers and add an event listener for the click event. And whenever an accordion item header is clicked, we want to toggle between adding and removing the active class to it. Okay, let's check the result. If I click on the accordion header, indeed the active class is added and we get the minus sign. If I click again, the active class is removed and we get back the plus sign. Very nice. Now let's move back to our CSS. And just in order to stimulate your creativity, let's quickly go through a couple of alternative ways we could use in order to show whether the accordion item is open or not. For example, we could use the transform property in order to rotate the element by 45 degrees when the active class is present. Nice, and we could even smoothen the transition by setting transition for the transform property 0.2 seconds duration and is in out timing function. Okay, so this is an alternative implementation. We could of course use some other symbol. For example, this is a black triangle pointing down, and let's rotate it by 118 degrees when it is active. Nice, and we could rotate it anti-clockwise if we wanted. So there are many ways you could go about this. Feel free to create your own special implementation. Now back to our main example. Let's continue with styling the accordion item body, which also contains the accordion item body content. But for now, let's include everything in the body. So let's set padding to 1 rem, line height to 1.5 rem, and we somehow want to have a more clear visual separation between header and body. One way we could do this would be by changing background color or even font color, but instead let's add a horizontal line separating them. For this purpose, we will use the border top property and set it to 1 pixel solid, and let's use the body background color. And I suppose we could increase border width to 3 pixels. Looks okay, but we could make things a bit more interesting by using the linear gradient CSS function for the color. For this purpose, we will use the border image property, which is actually a shorthand property for a bunch of other properties. The linear gradient function refers to the border image source property, and we will also set the border image slice property to 1 in order for this to work, since it prevents the default slicing of the image into sections. So let's set the linear gradient. A while ago I've created a video explaining in detail how to use the linear gradient function. I will include a link in the description, feel free to check it out. So direction will be to right, green will be the starting color, and yellow will be the ending color. And if we save, it doesn't work, and that's because we didn't set the border image slice to 1. So let's do this. Very nice. Or we could, for example, start with the body background color and end up with transparent. Or we could start with transparent, get to the body background color midway, and end up with transparent. There are literally countless combinations, feel free to experiment, and I prefer 1 pixel border width instead of 3. Now, if we didn't want to animate the opening and closing of the body, we could simply set its display property to none, and whenever the active class is present over the accordion item header, set the display property for the adjacent accordion item body to block. As simple as that. However, if we want to animate this, we can't use the display property. One way to approach the problem would be by using the max height property and initially setting it to 0 and overflow to hidden. However, this way the padding over the body is still visible, as well as the border. For this purpose, we will move this part into the inner div, the accordion item body content. Nice, and let's set transition for the max height property with 0.2 seconds duration and is out timing function. Okay, now it would be nice if we could, for example, set the max height property to auto when the active class is present. However, this wouldn't work. We could make an assumption for max height. For example, if we don't expect the height of the body to exceed 200 pixels, we can set it to 200. This sort of works. However, by increasing the max height assumption, animation keeps getting worse. So we can't really rely on this one, and therefore, you guessed it, JavaScript comes to the rescue. Let's go. Up to this point, we toggle the active class over the accordion item header. Next, let's access the adjacent sibling accordion item body and store it into a variable for easier access. For this purpose, we will use the next element sibling property over the accordion item header. Next, we want to check whether after toggling, accordion item header has the class active. And if the active class is present over the accordion item header, we want to set the max height of the accordion item body. And by the way, notice the use of camel case here, since in JavaScript hyphens can be mistaken as subtraction attempts. So we want to set max height to accordion item body.scroll height plus px. The scroll height property returns the entire height of an element in pixels, including the height that is not viewable due to overflow. And if active class is not present, we want to set max height back to 0. And that should be it. Let's check the result. Looks nice and smooth. Also, no errors in the console. I think it already looks quite good in smaller screens. Maybe we could reduce the root font size a bit, which in turn will affect all related styling, the styling with the REM units. So let's do this. For browser window width up to 767 pixels, the following styling rules apply. We will only change the root font size to 14 pixels. Okay, and let's add a few more accordion items and check the result. Very nice, we are actually done, but before wrapping it up, let's quickly go through an alternative implementation in which the accordion allows for the display of only one collapsed item at a time. For example, if the first accordion item is open and we click on the second accordion item, then the first item will automatically close, leaving only the second one open. So let's move back to our JavaScript. And before executing this process for the clicked accordion item, we first want to check whether some other accordion item is currently open, and if yes, to close it. So we are selecting the accordion item header which currently has the class active and store it into the variable currently active accordion item header. And I'm probably being a bit over descriptive here. And we then want to check whether indeed such an element exists, and if yes, we also want to ensure that it is different than the clicked element, because the process for the clicked element is executed here. In this case, we want to remove the active class from this element. The toggle method here will always remove the active class since it will always be present. So alternatively, we could use the remove method. And we also want to set max height for its body to 0. So let's use this property to get the body, and let's copy paste this to set max height to 0. So we are doing it in one step instead of two. We are actually skipping the variable creation part. Okay, I think this should do the job. Let's check the result. Very nice. Okay guys, let's leave it here. I hope you enjoyed this video and got some value out of it. If you did, please hit the like button and share it with anyone who might be interested. Also, don't forget to subscribe if you want more. I would love to hear your thoughts in the comments section below. Until next time, keep coding, keep improving, and enjoy the journey. Take care. Bye.